It's Monday, the 27th of February, 2023. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's jump straight into it. Story number 1, we all know house prices are falling, and we'll find out more about that later this week when CoreLogic releases February data. And it seems that retail investors are looking for alternatives, things like fast food outlets and childcare centres and even petrol stations.
Yeah, so over the past week, there was a series of commercial property auctions in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. Of the 30 properties offered, 29 were sold. That was about $85 million worth of assets, according to Financial Review. Now, the real estate company involved, Burgess Rawson, hosted the auctions. The sweet spot apparently is under $3.5 million, and many mum and dad investors are buying with cash, so less affected by interest rates. We're talking about properties with long-term leases. McDonald's or Hungry Jack's or 7-Eleven or someone like that might have the lease, so they're less likely to default on payments. The sites are often in prime locations. It's just interesting that mum and dad investors are pushing into that market. Why are they doing that? Well, often it's because the housing market hasn't been doing so well, though I must say the preliminary clearance rate over the weekend was pretty good. In fact, almost 70%. A lack of stock is helping. That's definitely part of it. But still, like Sydney's preliminary clearance rate was almost 72%, Melbourne was 68%, Brisbane at 65%, Adelaide, the mighty Adelaide, came in at 88.6%. These clearance rates aren't typical of a falling market, even with low stock levels. It'll be very interesting to see what happens to house prices in the next few months.
Yeah, certainly will be. Story number 2, Sean. The big news in markets came out of the US over the weekend.
Yes, inflation figures in the world's largest economy came in higher than expected, pushing markets lower. Now, analysts have been hopeful that prices are falling. However, the Federal Reserve's preferred measure of inflation, something called the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index, was 5.4% higher than a year earlier. You take out the volatile items, food, energy, stuff like that, it was 4.7% higher. Came as consumer spending surged last month. You put all that together, you start worrying more about inflation, and that means higher interest rates. It triggered a sell-off in bonds. Bond yields rise when people think interest rates are going to rise, and that's exactly what has happened. In fact, bond yields on a US 2-year note is now more than 4.8%. Why do we care about that? Well, that hasn't happened since 2007. It's also pushed the US dollar higher and the Aussie dollar lower. So plenty of reasons to think the local market won't do so well today. What'll be really interesting is on Wednesday when we get the economic growth figures for the December quarter in Australia. That'll impact the market as well.
Yeah, it's a very big week ahead, Sean. Story number 3, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has come out swinging against the big banks, saying their behaviour in not passing through high deposit rates is completely unacceptable and that the banks need to get their act together.
Yes, Albo is not happy. He said the government has communicated its concerns very loudly and is doing so again. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission launched an inquiry into the issue, saying increases on rates for deposits have been smaller and less consistent than those applied to mortgages. We've seen that in the bank's net interest margins during the recent earnings season. Albanese was also asked about the Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe and whether he'll be reappointed in September. He didn't answer directly, but he said Lowe has the confidence of the government. I'm not sure I'd be that confident when the Prime Minister says Lowe has the confidence of the government.
No, I don't think so. Story number 4, Sean, is still in kind of politics. We had Energy and Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen yesterday saying the delays in Snowy Hydro 2.0 are deeply disappointing. Now, it's what is causing the delays that's really quite fascinating here.
Well, yes. Basically, the mega pumped hydro project has been stalled for months after its tunnelling machine, Florence is the nickname, became bogged in soft earth and effectively halted drilling of a vital 27-kilometre link between 2 reservoirs. Very important, particularly for the stability of the energy grid, that we get this scheme up and running. Now, it's worth about $6 billion, this scheme. The government said it won't be holding an independent review into what's happening, as has been called. Bowen was also asked about the future of coal and gas projects. He said the government is not planning to ban them, as the Greens are pushing for. Of course, the government's currently negotiating with the Greens over climate policy.
Just seems odd, a tunnelling machine getting bogged. Wouldn't you just dig your way out?
Good. I mean, Florence and the Machine. I don't know.
I wonder if that's why it's called that. Great name.
Great name.
All right, Sean, last one. Story number 5. Using marijuana every day increases the risk of developing heart disease, according to a major study released in the US over the weekend.
Yes, cannabis is legal in some states of the US, including New York, so health studies have greater significance than previously. Daily cannabis users are 34% more likely to have coronary artery disease. Now, previous studies suggest marijuana users have an elevated risk of suffering strokes, particularly younger users. The flip side is that its use is on the rise in many parts of the world because of its ability to relieve chronic pain and help with conditions like chemotherapy-induced nausea. Certainly two sides to this coin, but worrying that this latest study suggests that heart disease and the use of cannabis regularly are linked.
Yeah, it's a bit concerning. That's it, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 27th of February, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough for you, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.